Get ready for truth and transparency from an ocean of liberal tears. Welcome to the Blue Shark Show with your host, Mike Lang.
Republican State Convention 2022 held in Houston, Texas last week, and we have several members that went to the convention, and we're trying to get kind of a wrap-up of what happened during the convention, how the Republicans actually did their new platform, and what the legislative priorities are going to be. So today in studio, we have Dave Eagle, who is Hood County Commissioner, Precinct 4. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing real well, Mike. Good to see you and glad to be out of Houston.
I don't blame you.
Man, whew, what a town.
It is.
Good town to get out of.
Amen to that. We also have Nate Criswell that went to the convention. How you doing, Nate?
Great, Mike. I tell you, coming back from this convention was really energizing. Getting down there and seeing just how conservative the Texas GOP actually is. It was great to be a part of that.
Excellent. I'm glad you had the chance to go, and I think you've been there before, haven't you?
No, that was actually my first convention.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, that was eye-opening, I bet.
Oh, big time. Big time. It was a cool process to see, and, we do what we do at the county, but to see it on the state level and how it all comes together, it really kind of mimicked the legislature with all the committees and everything.
Okay, we have Melanie Graff, who's a GISD trustee, and Melanie went to the state convention also. I think this was your fourth convention, right?
It was. It was good. We took our kids and the whole family there, and
well, good. You took your family down, so they were able to see what goes on a little bit and enjoy the process. So that's really good. I think did they enjoy it?
Yes, but not Houston. They said never again, Houston.
Yeah, that seems to be the common thread, right?
Yeah.
All right, Dave, what were your expectations going into the convention, and what did you leave with?
Well, the expectations going down there was just, this would be my first convention was 2012. This was my sixth convention, actually. And I was kind of looking at this as my last convention to go to. And I wanted to go down there and see fellow patriots. It's quite a departure from the 2012 convention, the first one I went to. We've kind of flipped the party to the conservative side visibly. And so I was hoping that it would be that way, and it was. And I feel like we were amongst a lot of like-minded people, so it felt real good to be down there in an environment where people seem to have a goal to bring this party to a more conservative area and keep it there.
And what kind of we're talking about with the conventions, if people don't know and they're just kind of following along with politics, is we have our precinct conventions on a local level, and then we have our county convention for the county, and then people are picked to go down as delegates to, this time it was Houston, to the convention, and then they get on committees and they get to vote on certain things, and there's rules committees and there's the platform planks and a lot of different committees that people can sit on to help forge the Republican platform of the state of Texas for the next 2 years. And I believe we were talking about it earlier, we had 337 planks last session, and this time we have 275.
Correct. Yeah, they whittled the number down. Now, I think there was some combinations, mergings of some of them, but I've always been a proponent to bring the platform down to, say, 100 planks, something, really the main issues. And so it was good. It was good to see them bring the number down. And, we go down there, we elect our party chair for the year, we elect our party vice chair for the next 2 years, we elect our SREC reps, which are the folks that are above the county chair level, and then we vote on a platform, we vote on the rules, and we just get together and talk about what we expect of our elected officials. We have a lot of elected officials show up, and I think that the platform is becoming more and more relevant to more and more people within the party.
All right, Melanie, what was your overall impression of the convention?
My overall impression, it seemed like there were less people there. I don't know if that was due to the economy, maybe the cost of gas and inflation and high groceries, but the people that were there, I felt like majority were conservative, constitutional conservatives, very few, in my opinion, very few rhinos.
And that's good. And maybe they stayed home. I don't know. Maybe they didn't want to be part of the process, which this is like the time to get in if you want to be part of the process. But I think you're right. I think coming off of COVID, I think the economy right now, a lot of people stayed home. I even heard some people talk about it being in Houston, and they're not going to Houston. So, I mean, all those factors could have been part of that.
I think it was. I know for myself and my family, we stayed in a nice part of Houston, but it's still, to me, no matter what part, it still feels very unsafe and very crowded. So it wasn't the ideal location. I think a lot of people prefer, per se, like San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
Or Fort Worth.
Fort Worth was the best, I think. But.
Yeah.
And Nate, you brought up this is your first convention, although you've been involved in politics for years and years. And you said you were energized. Can you explain kind of why and how that came about?
Yeah, getting down there and, here at the local level, for example, sometimes it seems like the conservative wing isn't actually the majority within the GOP, but getting down there to the convention where we are, in fact, determining what it means to be a Republican and how we need to be governing when, a Republican's an elected official. It was cool to see that, and it's a little reminder that, hey, nobody out here is extremists. We're actually the mainstream. It's the liberals that are, extremists.
There's definitely a group within the Republican Party that is more liberal, more establishment, and then there's a group that actually want to follow the platform planks that have been voted on by everybody at the convention. And it seems like year after year that if you want to follow the platform, the principles, the guiding rules of the Republican Party, that you're called an extremist, you're told that you don't want to help people out, you're told that you don't like people, that you're intolerant, that you're this and that. And if you look and read these platform planks, they're fairly specific. And the principles are, and they go over the Constitution and our God-given rights. And if you want to stray from that as a Republican, like I've said before, do not get in the way of the ones that voted on this plank and made this our platform plank for the state of Texas.
This platform, in my opinion, is a contract that we're presenting to our elected officials. And we're saying, we get our elected officials to sign off to say, yes, they support the platform or not. Because this is a way we can at least see some semblance of who these people are. And so, in my opinion, when you sign off and say, I support this platform, then you've made a contract with the voters. You're telling them that you're going to stay within the platform as much as you can. And what we've had in the past is we've had way too many Republican elected officials who say, well, the platform's theater, or it's just I know it's there, but it's really not, I'm really not going to go by the platform that much. I think the feeling I got down there this trip, and actually I can see it working this way the last 10 years, the people that put this platform together and the party members that went down there and put this whole issue together are saying, no, we want you to abide by the platform or we don't want you in here.
And that makes sense. I mean, it's out there for all the people that decide to run as a Republican, as an independent, as a Democrat. At least pick your platform, go read the different platforms and say, I want to run as a Republican. But what we have is we have people that run as Republicans. And if you don't want to do plank 51, whatever it may be, then that's, fine. If you're not going to fight for it, then, the voters will handle that. But what we have is Republicans fighting against other Republicans that stand for all the planks. And we can't have that. We all have to get together and become one arrow going forward, because the Democrat Socialists, we shouldn't be fighting within ourselves. If you're a Democrat Socialist and run as a Republican, then shame on you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this platform, it is pro-faith, it's pro-family, it's pro-Second Amendment, pro-strong borders, pro-secure elections. I mean, it's all a bunch of really mainstream ideas that it just strikes me as so odd whenever the more moderate Republicans try to label people that follow the platform as extremists.
And that's been done here in Hood County quite a bit through the Hood County News, through the compassionate conservatives. There's been all kinds of groups that have started that have opposed the radicals that want to follow, the Texas GOP platform. And like you said earlier, Dave, I think it's just a guideline for some of them, and they think they're Republicans because they may have voted for Trump or somebody on the national level.
Yeah, that's true. In fact, that's a great point. For some people, but at least here in Hood County, just the fact that they voted for Trump makes them a commentator on what a Republican should be. And what I find is that most of them that tell us what we ought to be have never even looked at this platform.
Or any platform. And I would venture to say a lot of those are elected officials themselves that haven't even gone to a convention or at least read the principles and the platform planks. Now, when we get into the convention itself, you were there 4 days. What was probably the best thing you saw going on, and what was kind of something that really made you just roll your eyes saying, hey, I can't believe this?
One of my favorite moments was probably when John Cornyn was booed.
Right. I saw that on CNN, had a tape of that, and it just, he was visibly shaken. You could tell from the video. I don't know how he was in person if you're able to see him.
We were pretty far back, so we couldn't see him, but I do know that it made Citizen Free Press and Gateway Pundit. So, just the fact that he was booed. So that's where I felt that a lot of constitutional conservatives were there, because it was pretty loud. We were in the back, but it was pretty loud even in the back.
I hate to say this, but I somewhat enjoyed the booing, just for the fact that it was an expression, a very large expression of dissatisfaction with Mr. Cornyn, because they get up there, these U.S. senators and representatives, they get away from their home areas, and they go up there and they turn Washington. And Cornyn's a good example of that. He's not I'm sorry, but he doesn't represent Texas anymore. He's up there representing big D.C., inside the Beltway. There's no way around it. He wants to play ball with the Democrats too much, and he gets reelected. I don't know how and why. I was against him the last time he ran for reelection, but maybe this time we'll get him out of there.
Well, we could hope.
That's that conservative grassroots holding him accountable, because everybody knows he's been playing ball with the Democrats on these red flag laws. Those red flag laws are another shred to the Constitution. So that was probably the most energizing, was seeing that all the delegates care about accountability enough to let him know, hey, you can't be doing that. And Abbott didn't even bother coming in to talk to the General Assembly. Because
I think that Abbott would have gotten booed even more. Senator Cornyn, John Cornyn, you talk about the red flag laws, and there's no due process involved in that whatsoever. And so he's leading the Gang of 10, or whatever they're calling them now, on the national level. And not only that, but there was word coming out during the convention about immigration and some of the things he's talking about for immigration. So he went to the convention at, for him, probably one of the worst times, because he keeps saying he's a conservative. Well, that he isn't. And you saw on social media that people went after the Republican convention for booing. How could you boo John Cornyn? You have to be respectful. You have to be this. Well, I can tell you something. He will not forget going to the 2022 convention and being booed and having to speak. And if you're being booed like that, I'd like to see somebody really run against him next time. Somebody that's really, really serious.
Maybe Huffines will.
I don't know who will, but, as a best thing, you brought that up about accountability and Cornyn, and, we can talk all we want about being respectful or disrespectful, but if you're going to go up there and boo a sports team or boo, Cornyn, that's accountability. That is saying, we don't want you doing red flag laws. We don't want you talking about, immigration as far as, hey, everybody come in, you're automatically citizens, and that's coming down the line. So he is a very, very, he's one that doesn't follow the platform. So why he went, I don't know. And those lanyards I heard were a big thing when, his lanyards, right?
Yeah. So the first night we checked in and we went through the credentials line, and they give you a lanyard. And the stock one that they gave everybody was John Cornyn. Well, I walk in, and the first thing I see is the Texas scorecard set up right as you walk into the expo. And they were giving out their lanyards that said Texas scorecard on them. And I'll never forget this image. I wish I'd have taken a picture of it. This little trash can was overflowing with those John Cornyn lanyards because everybody was ditching them, you know.
Thankfully, we were able to exchange ours for a more conservative. Texas scorecard had some free lanyards we could exchange them for, so we did, and they had a big box of John Cornyn lanyards, and I think they were going to do something with them, but I don't remember what it was.
Probably burn them, but I don't know. Who knows?
They can tie them together and do something with them. Who knows?
Yeah, they could do something with them.
It's kind of a small protest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were doing it in a ceremonial way. You know, it was fun to watch. It was like taking it like that and throwing it in the bucket and getting the other one. So yeah, it was not unnoticed that it was a ceremonial change.
Well, I did see some pictures on social media of people that would wrap their guns up with the red lanyards and say no to Cornyn, you know, no for his gun control and red flag laws.
Cool.
So some people were doing certain things with them, but who knows what'll end up, you know, where they'll end up. So what was one of the best things that you saw at the convention?
Well, I'll give you a highlight. I mean, there was many things, and I want to tag on to John Cornyn right quick first. The folks everybody that went to that convention, I want you to know that there's a tweet out there that John Cornyn said, well, he doesn't give in to the mobs when he was asked about the people booing him. So you're a mob, you know. You're a mob if you're with the Republican Party that went down and attended this convention. But one of the highlights for me was when Sid Miller stood up and he gave his colorful speech the way he does. Mm-hmm. But he made a comment that really brought the house down. He said, you know, it's gotten to the point now where this isn't about Republicans versus Democrats anymore. This is about patriots versus traitors. And I mean, the House came down on that because I think he's correct. I think that there's such a big line between the factions right now that I felt like people down there were in the mindset that we want to save America. I mean, that was the mindset down there. We have to save America, and we've got to do whatever it takes to do that. And moderation's not going to get it anymore.
No, and unfortunately, that's not the way it is. And people look at it as the far, far right and the far, far left. And if you're being pegged as the far, far right for following this platform, then something's wrong. And that's the way society has become through the fake news media, whether it's CNN or Texas Trib or whoever it may be. And that's what we're stuck with. So I'm glad to hear that there were patriots down there that want, you know, we have transgender issues, we have the drag queen issues in Hood County, all kinds of things, the books in the schools. So I'm glad there are people down there fighting for morals, principles, and the platform.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I've noticed the last couple of years, maybe longer, but really coming up to a crescendo, so to speak, is the school boards. And I mean, you know, school boards are traditionally alleged nonpartisan type of a seat, an elected position, but the school boards are being brought into the limelight because of what they've been doing, and that's where it all starts, is within our schools. And there was a lot of talk about school boards at the Republican convention this time that I have not heard before.
Yeah, there was a heavy focus on children specifically, you know, whether it's the schools or not, you know, grooming them and, you know, all this stuff in pop culture. It was cool to see the GOP really focus on the family.
And that's been forefront in the news all over the state of Texas for, you know, a lot of ISDs, especially the books and the grooming and the CRT that they say isn't there, but it is. All you have to do is open up, you know, any type of social media and you can see it there. And we did shows on Brain Pop and things like that. And although they said they didn't use it, it's still there.
Yeah.
In general, at the convention, what was your best memory, or what stood out as good for you?
There's two things that stood out for me. I think the first was when Ted Cruz came out to speak. just he was on fire, and he was especially talking about our children, and he brought up the Buzz Lightyear movie and how Disney has just, something from my kids' childhood. They were excited to go see it, and then they went woke with it, so it's not something we can see. So he was touching on that, and so that was a good highlight. And then I think the other thing that was very telling too is who wasn't there as an elected official. I didn't see Glenn Rogers. I know he doesn't represent us anymore, but just from the state of Texas, I didn't see Glenn Rogers, August Pfluger, and more. So I think it's telling about who cares and listens to the grassroots, the people.
Right. And I know a lot of the officials try to go in and out for a day maybe, so you may have missed them, but they may have not shown, who knows. But when you're there, you certainly, make it a point to go around to as many of your constituents as possible.
Right.
And in that note, I will give kudos where they're due as well. I know Shelby Slauson showed up for our SD.22 caucus, which I was very, glad to see her. And so did Senator Brian Birdwell. He showed up. And that tells us, that signals to the people out here that, they're concerned, they want to come out.
That's right. They're in front of the people where they should be.
That's an interesting statement, too, in front of the people where they should be. The others that choose not to show up, is it because they're afraid to be in front of the people? And then you have to ask yourself why. And,
we talked about that also, and I think a lot of it depends on, and Dave, you brought it up, but there's a difference between D.C. and back home, and there's a difference between Austin and back home. And when you live in that Austin world, and then you come home and you live in that chamber world, you don't tend to get out and see the people as much as you do if, you're not involved in all the lobby stuff. So I think some people tend to gravitate towards the lobby and others gravitate towards the people.
That makes sense.
So we talked about kind of the best things and where everything's going. What about one of the, not so good ones, the worst things that you saw at the convention?
One of the worst things I saw at the convention was a minority report that some of the more liberal members of the platform committee, that were there longer than everybody else, they were there about a full week. They put together a minority report, and this report wants to tie the judge's hands when it comes to custody cases, and it was to undo a lot of the equal parenting plank that's currently in our platform. They were basically wanting to eliminate due process and take away judicial discretion when it comes to custody cases. And what the equal parenting plank says is, hey, kids need both parents, and they need them about 50-50.
They do.
Yeah, and that the minority report, I was prepared to go up and speak against it, and it luckily it died before it hit the floor. But the minority report had language, and it was vague. It was very poorly worded, arguably violated due process, what it was proposing to do. The terms are undefined. The language was imprecise. In my opinion, it was to completely undermine the judicial process. And thankfully, due to the factor that we were trying to get, we had to be out of there by 5 on Saturday, they condensed everything down. We're only going to talk about each unit for X amount of time, and it never made it to the floor. It died before it hit the floor, and that was good. I enjoyed seeing that die a natural death on the floor.
But it's part of the process, right?
Yeah, it is. And, they tried to bring it back twice by asking for a
suspension of
the rules. Yeah. Unfortunately, it didn't because, that minority report, what it would have done is make it to where attorneys and some of their clients could more easily weaponize a system that's already being weaponized against good parents all over the state. And we can't have that.
No, it has to be the opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to have due process, and both parents need to be involved. And if it isn't, there's already remedies in there for the parents that aren't not good or bad for the kids, however it may be. And, that being your first convention, Nate, I guess it was good to see both sides, where some of the liberal Republicans come from. And I don't even want to call them that anymore because, they might as well not even be Republicans. But, this is the place. And I say, if you want to change something, go to the convention. So, you go to the convention, and if something like that doesn't see the light of day, then so be it. We move along, right?
Yeah, and for that to not see the light of day, that was a huge win. They took that voice vote to finally on his second attempt to get it brought back up after we'd already passed that section, and it was maybe 3 or 4 people versus 3,000 or 4,000 people. It was great.
Wow, something to see.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a second thing. What was the second thing?
I think when you've attended more than one convention, you get tired of the grandstanding and I don't know the best way to explain it, but coming out with all the big speeches and the emotional music, and my kids would call it cringy. Some of like when they're announcing an elected official and they come out with all the big music and they do all for those of us who have been there, and maybe it's just me, but I just want to get to the meat and potatoes. Like, do we have to do all this pomp and circumstance? So it's hard for me because you're sitting there for a long time. So I get irritated having to sit through that. I like the voting and doing the work, but it's a little too much and too long.
It maybe has to be a little bit lower key, and they're not like the elected officials aren't the heroes. They're actually the people that, the people in the stands hired them to do a job.
Right.
So maybe a little bit more humility.
Yeah,
at the convention.
Can we treat them more like, like the servants that they're supposed to be to the people instead of a celebrity?
That's a good suggestion.
It would be nice because and most of us are smart enough to catch on. And
yeah, Dave, what was your probably worst or unfortunate thing to see?
The worst thing for me was just being in Houston. I enjoy the convention from the standpoint of you can have debates like that. You can have people bring a minority report in and see what the people, get the feel of what the people want to see happen. And so I like a lively debate. And, our forefathers, they got into fist fights. They got into duels. Well, of course, one of them didn't come back from that one maybe, but at least the fist fights, they would come back in and get their business done. Some of these issues are controversial, and people need to be able to put their thoughts on the table, argue them out, and come to some kind of hopefully a consensus where you vote on a platform and you vote it in or out. So again, for me, it was just being in Houston. I hope this is a message to the Republican Party of Texas. Please don't ever take this to Houston again.
I think the next one will be in San Antonio, from what I'm hearing. So
that'll be nice.
That'll be a little bit different. But, getting back to a little bit of what you said, and we say it on the show quite a bit, is, here's the platform for the next 2 years. Some of it is national, a lot of it's local. And when you sign up as a Republican, this is your platform. This is your book. This is your rule book. Look at the principles in the very beginning of it. And if you don't like it, you can't follow them, then maybe run as something else. Or go to the next convention and try to change it, is what we say. You don't like it, go to the convention and change it. And that's what people did. So, this is what we have for 2022.
They're calling this the most conservative platform ever written right now, and that to be the most conservative convention in Texas GOP history. So, that's a pretty cool thing to be a part of.
And I think the time that we're in right now almost dictates it, with the open borders that we have, with everything going on in the schools, which was pretty big at the convention, and, what's going on with the economy. So people are getting back in gear, and they're tired of it.
Yeah, I agree. And if this convention week we had last week is an indicator of public opinion in general, and I feel like it's a microcosm of it. I think there's changes are coming, and Ted Cruz gave a great speech, and one of the things that he talked about, or one of his isms that he threw out there, was we're not going to see a red wave in November. We're going to see a red tsunami. And I feel the feeling down there was just that with the majority of the convention goers.
On that note of Ted Cruz, I got to tell you, I've been watching him for years now. I think everybody has, and I've always kind of said that I didn't think he was necessarily electable as a presidential candidate because of the way he presented. That man, he must have a new speechwriter or something. He was on fire. It was like a mix between watching a stand-up comedian and a preacher and, just someone that was really hyped and energized about what they were talking about. If he keeps that up, he could be a contender in 24.
Over the last 4 years, his personality's really changed. And he's kind of come out of his shell, and he's kind of come out of that, that Supreme Court justice, constitutional kind of, and just become what would be a normal person saying, I'm tired of all this crap. And I think that just resonates with most people.
Oh, yeah. There was one line in particular where he said, he was talking about the Disney stuff and this new, lesbian toys or whatever in the Buzz Lightyear movie. He finally said, leave the kids alone. And the place just erupted with claps and approval. I mean, because it's all anybody wants. It's all we're trying to do. They want to call us bigots or anti-trans or homophobic or whatever, and it's not the case. Just leave it out of the kids' toys.
Maybe it's time to change for some people.
It's real simple.
I mean, either you like it or you don't, right?
That's right. And if you don't want to, if you're going to go against all the planks, if you're going to, there's people out here in Hood County, for instance, that tell me or tell us, the ones that go to the convention, help write the resolutions, help run the party. I was a precinct chair for years, that want to tell us how a Republican ought to be. It's like, well, I've never seen you at a convention. I've never seen you talk about the platform. So it's kind of like an armchair quarterback that doesn't know the game but thinks they do.
And even worse than that, one of the people that does that a lot signed up to be a delegate and then no called, no showed.
Yeah, there you go. Case in point.
And that's going to happen, but, it all comes down, if you don't want to follow it, that's on you as an elected official, and then you'll be probably voted out. But where I run into the big problem of it is, if you want to vote your conscience and you had a change of heart or a change of conscience, so be it. You're going to have to put up with the consequences. But inevitably, once somebody does that, they start attacking the people that want to stand on the platform. And it becomes less of a, you vote the way you want, I'll vote the way I want. It's an attack mode against the people following the platform, and then there's where our split comes in. And that's the part and the friction that shouldn't be in our party.
Yeah, and that friction is oftentimes a product of the person going against the platform's own insecurity. They see that other person that provides that contrast of how they're supposed to be doing things, and that makes them feel bad because they know when they ran their first campaign, they said, oh, I'm a good Republican, I'm going to be conservative, I'm going to do all this, and it's easier said than done.
And this is where it starts, right here at the platform. So, it's put up or shut up time, and now it's time to follow the platform and go along. As a Hood County elected official, school board member, and the platform seemed pretty heavy this time on school items, do you think that we have an election coming up in 4 or 5 months. Do you think that we're going to get candidates that actually will follow the platform like you do? Or, where do you see this going on a local level?
I pray that we do. We need to. If we don't, we're in trouble. I mean, I think, and especially like school board, they'll say it's not political, but everything is. And you have to know, because people are going to vote their conscience. And so you have to know what these people believe in. So I pray that we get people who will run and who are conservative and believe in the Republican platform. Because if you are conservative, naturally it's just common sense that you're going to believe in the Republican platform, at least to me.
And that goes along with, people do say that the school board is not supposed to be political, yet that's the biggest portion of our tax dollars on a local level for ad valorem taxes. And so it is political. And it's enough that a lot of things are starting to go into the platform about schools. So, when people sign up as not a Republican or, you're apolitical, whatever it may be, I want to know personally where you stand on that spectrum, whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican, or whether you think you're a Republican. So I think that's something new in the platform that's starting to really grow, the school thing, over the last several years. So you being on the school board, I mean, this is like up front and center throughout the nation, everything that's going on in the schools.
I think the Supreme Court yesterday made a ruling as far as schools go, in respect to the freedom to choose. It was a ruling in Maine. I don't remember all the details, but it's in the direction of being able to choose.
School choice has been big for years and years down in the Texas legislature. It wouldn't be true school choice. And I think the school finance, and we can get deep into the weeds on all, what's going on. But as far as the convention, I think the turn is towards, schools and, less money going to schools as far as taxes, getting away from ad valorem taxes and doing some kind of consumption tax. So I just want my future school board trustees to understand the Republican Party platform, and if they decide to run, say, yes, I'm for that platform. And I know both you and Dave Eagle are for the platform, and you're true conservatives, not a trans Republican. So I appreciate that.
Excuse me, something else on the allegedly nonpartisan school board. It's as political as it's ever been right now, the school boards all across this country. And for somebody to sit there and say this is nonpartisan, they got their head in the sand, because the way the issues on the books for 12, 11, 10-year-old kids that they want into the library, as well as you have a body of people setting your tax rate. Well, I want to know what your political leanings are, because your politics tell me how you're going to want to tax me. And so to me, it's very relevant. School boards have gotten very political, whether you like it or not. And we need to be able to know who you are when you're sitting up there. Not I'm just nonpartisan. It's like, well, who are you really?
Yeah, when they bring that nonpartisan up and they're a trustee or they're running, that's a huge red flag. And it should be for any true conservative that wants to follow the Republican Party platform. Red flag. Dig deeper into what they're saying.
Even the simple things like freedom of speech. I mean, the school board here, if they don't like what you say, they'll change the rules. So, your hands are tied behind your back and you don't have the freedom to speak like you did before.
Well, I appreciate you guys going down to, Houston and being at the convention and standing up for Hood County and our Senate district. So I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for having me. And it's always good to be here. And, it's time for us to move the ball down the field. We've got an election in November, and we're going to have 3 school board. Speaking of school board, we got 3 seats coming up that people need to take a real hard look at. And I've got an opponent, a Democrat opponent, Katie Lang, our county clerk. She's got a Democrat opponent. So it's the game's not over for the year. And we also got a city council meeting coming up. That's getting less and less nonpartisan as well, because they're taking our tax money from us.
Right.
So, but thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
I have fun going to the convention. My kids usually do. Maybe the next one, I don't think it'll be in Houston, so it'll be better. So it's always our pleasure to go and do that work. And thanks for having me. And I would just encourage anyone who's a conservative Republican to, like Dave said, we have those 3 spots open for school board.
Please like and smash that like and subscribe button for YouTube and Rumble. And remember that these people went to the convention. They spent their time. They're elected. They know what they have to do. They're serving the people. They're go down to Houston or wherever it may be, and they're in the process, and they're fighting for the platform planks. Whether we agree on the planks or not, or there's friction down there, so be it. The debate's there. We're having a healthy debate. When we're done at the convention, we come out of the convention with the platform. Then it's time for the Republicans who actually sign up as Republicans to follow that platform and the principles of that platform, or you're really not a Republican. Shark Show out.